Welcome to bicycle maintenance with a fairly average mechanic, the fairly average mechanic being me. Now, I've done a number of videos which you can find on this channel. They're all collected into a playlist which is called Bicycle Maintenance with a Fairly Average Mechanic, and there's about 10 of them so far, and it shows you how to do a number of things on a bike. And if you're fairly new to cycling, or if you've come back to cycling after some time away, partly because of the coronavirus pandemic, and you want to know how to do a few things on your bicycle because it's difficult or expensive to take it to a bike shop, can I just say, by the way, that if you do need stuff for your bicycle, do try and patronize your local bike shop. Try not to buy everything from Wiggle or Chain Reaction, because if you don't use your local bike shop, it won't survive, particularly in this difficult time. So it's always a good idea to give them your business if you can. But you don't always want to go and get your bike maintained at a bike shop, particularly if there's something that you can do yourself. And that's what this series of videos has mainly been about. Now, in each of the videos, I've tended to point out the tools that you need, or the tools that are useful, and sometimes the tools that you can get away with not having. So I thought I'd do a specific video on the bicycle tools, or the tools which are essential for a fairly average mechanic. And if you get to be a better mechanic than me, then they'll still be the same essential tools. So let's look at some, and I'm going to start with what is probably the most important and most essential, and that is an Allen key, also known as a hex key, or a set of hex keys. Now, this particular one is made by Park Tools, and it has a T-shaped handle, and there is a short stubby bit here, and then there is a longer bit here. You would use this short stubby bit for undoing tough or well sealed up bolts, and this one is to allow you to get more access to them, and this slightly rounded tip means you can use it as a slightly offset angle from the straight angle that you would use this at. Now, you can buy a set of these tools from Park Tools, or you can buy them individually, or you can buy these individual hex keys from other companies. There's lots of places you can buy them from. You can get fairly cheap sets. It is a good idea to get a fairly good quality set. That doesn't mean necessarily the most expensive set, because it is very important that the size is very accurate and the metal is strong, nicely made, firm steel, I presume this is. If not, it's very easy to round the bolts on your bicycle, and that's not really something that you want to do. The other way of purchasing hex keys or Allen keys is in some kind of multi-tool like this. So you can see here, this one, again made by Park Tool, has got 6 different hex keys, and they're all in the most, or rather in the most common sizes. It is written on here: 8, 10, 6, 5, 4 and 3, and these are the most common sizes. You can get a similar one also made by Park Tool, which has a smaller selection. In other words, it starts at, I think, 2, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 6, that kind of thing. So some kind of set of hex keys or Allen keys are essential to use on the bike. The next thing you're going to need is a screwdriver of various sorts. This is a Phillips headed screwdriver. As you can see, it's a fairly small head. Obviously, different size screwdrivers are available. Again, this one is made by Park Tool. You don't have to buy any special sort of screwdrivers. You may have screwdrivers already in your toolbox for doing DIY stuff around the house. So any set of screwdrivers will do. The next thing is a pair of pliers. And if you're going to change your brake cables or your gear cables, then a set of pliers is very useful, both for cutting the cable. You can get special cable cutting pliers, but you don't need to buy those. An ordinary set of pliers will work just as well. And if you're going to pull the cable through and tighten it, then it's very useful to have a set of pliers. The next thing you're going to need is, if you want to remove or change the cassette, which is the gears that are attached to your rear wheel, you're going to need one of these things, which is called a chain whip. Again, this is made by Park Tool. You don't have to buy a Park Tool tool. They tend to be more expensive. They do tend to be very well made, but you can get much cheaper versions of this in your local bike shop or in Halfords or anywhere else. And quite often you'll find in Lidl or Aldi, they sell bike tools, or they have a special promotion and they sell bike tools. Now, to go with the chain whip, you need the tool to remove the cassette, and this tool is made by, I'm not sure who it's made by actually. Oh, I think I bought it from Evans. Yeah, Evans Cycles. And it has a handle, and then this goes through the cassette. This locks into the splines that lock the cassette onto your wheel, and that allows you to undo the cassette while holding it steady with your chain whip. And if you look at the video which is in this group of videos about how to remove the cassette from your bicycle, that will show you how. Next thing, which is absolutely essential, is a pump. Now, this is a track pump, and it's a large, heavy, workshop style pump. You don't need a track pump, although it's certainly very useful, but you are going to need a pump. This is a small pump. This happens to be made by Boardman, but any pump will do. It's certainly easier to pump up your tires if you ride regularly. Before you go out on the road, you pump up your tires. If you have a track pump, it makes things a lot better, but it's not essential that you buy a track pump. Even if you have a pump, or rather you must have a pump, and when you go out riding you should always take your pump with you, even if you decide to use one of these. And this is a CO2 gas canister with a valve attachment. And the way this works is that when you have a puncture, you attach, obviously you change the inner tube, and again there's a video on this channel about changing an inner tube. You then attach this to your valve, you screw in this canister, undo this valve here, and that releases the gas into your inner tube. One of these canisters will fill one inner tube, so if you go out riding and you only take this with you and you have two punctures, then you're stuffed. You really ought to take a pump as well as one of these. Some people swear by these. They do work very well. They are very useful to carry in your pocket, but they're not essential. You can get away with just carrying a pump so long as you remember to carry a pump. Now, another thing that you might want to do, or rather another thing that you will need to do, is to change your inner tube when you have a puncture. And in order to do that, you'll need a set of tyre leaves. Three tyre levers are useful, but two are sufficient. Again, these happen to be made by Park Tool. These are workshop style tools, if you like. They're very well made, they're very strong, they're more expensive than ordinary tyre levers. You can get basic tyre levers, you can get them quite cheaply in Lidl or Aldi, and quite often they come free with cycling magazines, and I've had quite a few that way myself. But you will certainly need a pair of tyre levers. If you do any work on your bike in terms of cleaning it, and you want to clean your chain, your gears, your chain rings, you're going to need some kind of degreaser. You can use warm water and fairy liquid. It does help if you have a specially designed bike degreaser. Again, it's not essential, but it certainly makes things easier. This one made by Finish Line I think is particularly good. It's not cheap, but it is very, very efficient. You spray this onto your cogs and you can just watch the oil slip away. It is quite amazing stuff. But as I say, other brands are available, cheaper brands are available, and lots of degreasers work very effectively. Having cleaned your bike, or even if you don't clean your bike, you do need to apply some lube. No sniggering at the back, please. And this is called a dry lube. You can also get a wet lube. I'll leave you to speculate about what the difference is. Well, I'll tell you what the difference is actually. You use a wet lube if you're going to do much riding in the rain. If you're only going to ride your bike mostly during the summer or during the dry period, then you use a dry lube. And don't ask me what the difference is in the formula, but supposedly there is one. This is one made by Muck-Off. It's quite a good lube, but you can use any kind of cycle lube. Should you use other kinds of lube for your bicycle? I suggest not. Now, if you want to adjust your brakes, it's very useful to have what is called a third hand tool. And this is a third hand tool, again made by Park Tool, because when you are adjusting brakes, there are really three things that you want to try and do at once. And that's quite difficult to do when you've only got two arms or two hands. If you've got three hands, of course, then you're lucky, but most people are only born with two. So a third hand tool such as this one is very useful. It's not essential, but if you do quite a lot of work on your bike and you have, or maybe more than one bike, and quite a lot of brake adjustments that need to be done, or gear adjustments, brake adjustments, then this particular tool is very useful. Now, just going back to Allen keys, or hex keys as they're also known, this little pack here, which is made by Topeak or Topeak, contains a ratcheted little handle like that, and then a number of different hex keys which then slot into there. Now, you don't need this kind of design as well as your normal set of hex keys or Allen keys, but I must say I do find these particularly useful. Some Allen keys are quite difficult to get at, some Allen bolts are quite difficult to get at on your bike, and this very stubby one, which has then got a ratcheted handle, it makes it very easy to then access those bolts. I'm thinking particularly of the bolts that hold your bottle cages to your frame, which can be quite difficult to access with a full-size tool like this. Something like this is particularly useful. It's not essential again, but if you should happen to have this already within your toolbox, it's very useful to use on the bike. Now, another type of bolt fixing that is used on your bike, or you may find on your bike, is called a Torx. And this is a Torx tool. Again, it's made by Park Tools. This is similar to the set of hex keys that I showed you earlier. And these Torx keys or tools come in different sizes. And again, you may find this particularly useful. Depending on which one of your components uses a Torx bolt, if you want to make some adjustments or changes to that Torx bolt, then you will need to have a set of Torx keys. Quite often, these sorts of little packs like this, this one actually doesn't, but quite often these little collections of tools do have various Torx fittings here. And if you've ever bought, or if you've ever received as a Christmas present from your dearly beloved partner, wife, husband, grandmother, sorry, I'm not suggesting your grandmother might be your partner, but it's the kind of present that grandmothers might give to their grandchildren, or even their children. I'm not quite sure where I'm going with this, or even grandfathers might give to their granddaughters who want to do some work on the bike. And what I'm talking about is a set of tools, and a set of tools which has got a multiple collection of fittings in it. You will often find, not always, Torx tools. So you may find you have them in your toolbox, you may find that you don't, and if you need to use that tool, then you'll need to buy it specially. Now, when you go out for a bike ride, apart from taking a spare inner tube, a couple of tyre levers and a pump, you should always take some kind of little multi-tool. Again, this one is made by Park. You can get lots of multi-tools made by lots of different companies. Again, you can usually get them in Aldi or Lidl pretty cheaply. And what this is a collection of Allen keys, hex keys of the various sizes, plus this includes a screwdriver. Here you can see a small flat-headed screwdriver. It also includes this particular hex key here, and this is a very useful collection of tools. Now, it is also useful to have a chain breaker, and if you're going to do work in your garage or work at home on your bike, then something to break the chain so that you can then replace the chain or put on a new chain is particularly necessary. And here is a chain breaker. Lots of different types are available, and you can get multi-tools that include a chain breaker on them. So certainly very useful to have a chain breaker tool in your workshop. Now, those are the tools that are pretty much essential and certainly very useful if you want to do some maintenance on your bike. There are a whole range of different cycling tools that you can get, some of which are worth having, some of which are probably not worth having, some of which you might use once a year, some of which you might never use. I have quite a big collection of tools, some of which have been given to me, some of which I've bought over the years, and some of them I've never actually used. And if you use, or if you are working on an old bike, by which I'm talking probably 10, 15, 20 years ago, when it wasn't usual for hex or Allen bolts to be used, normal screws were used, and therefore a screwdriver is particularly useful, or a bolt with a nut on it was used, and therefore you will need a collection of spanners. Spanners come in metric or imperial sizes, and you may have a collection of metric spanners in your toolbox, but if you work on an old bike, you may find you actually need a collection of imperial spanners, i.e. 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, and so on and so forth. Also, if you're working on bikes from a number of years ago, some of them have different types of components that require different types of tools, some of which are still available on eBay, some of which lots of old school cyclists still have in their garage, or you may have lying around, or your grandfather might have lying around, or if you're of a certain age that has a grandfather. I'm a bit too old now to have a grandfather, but anyway, you know what you mean. You know what I mean. If you've got tools in your toolbox from woodwork or metalwork or DIY jobs around the house, you've probably got most of the stuff that you need to work on your bike, and there isn't much stuff that you need to buy, but a few bits and pieces are always very useful. The last thing I suppose I ought to mention is a bike stand. Now, again, you can get bike stands quite often pretty cheaply on special offer in Lidl or Aldi, or you can buy them from bike shops, or you can buy them from Halfords and places like that. They are certainly very useful to use if you're planning to do much work on your bike. If you're only going to do occasional bits and pieces and tinkering, then no, you don't need a bike stand. But if you are going to do it regularly, they are certainly very useful. So I hope you found this particular video useful. If you want to look at all the other videos in this particular series and learn some of the other things that an average mechanic can more or less turn his hand to, i.e. me, then please do so. And I hope you enjoy them. And if you like these videos, please subscribe and click the bell so that you get a pinger. You get some kind of notification when I upload a new video. In the meantime, I hope you're getting through the coronavirus pandemic without too much trouble to you and your family. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.